"Take the cloth off," she begged. The rancher did it and stood in horror. Samuel's ranch was a place of quiet golden mornings and endless stretches of green fields. It had been in his family for generations, and every fence post, every wooden barn, every dusty path seemed to carry a story. The wind whispered through the tall grass, and the distant mountains cast a calm shadow over the land. Samuel, a man in his early 50s, had grown into the rhythms of this life. He knew the sound of the cattle before they even appeared over the hill, and the smell of fresh hay in the morning was as familiar to him as the back of his own hand. To outsiders, life here might seem dull, but to Samuel, it was a quiet sanctuary, a place where hard work and simplicity brought a sense of peace. That summer was warmer than usual, and the sun shone relentlessly on the wide-open plains. Samuel had spent the morning repairing a broken gate near the northern pasture. His hands, rough from years of labor, moved skillfully, tightening hinges and replacing splintered wood. By noon, sweat had soaked through his shirt, and he took a break under the shade of a large oak tree. He watched the cattle graze lazily, their heads dipping into the soft grass, completely unaware of the heat above. Samuel enjoyed these moments of calm, where the world seemed to slow down and only the simple sounds of nature filled the air. It was during this quiet afternoon that Emily arrived. She was a young woman in her early 20s, with soft brown hair that fell to her shoulders and eyes that sparkled with curiosity. Emily was Samuel's niece, though she had never spent much time on the ranch before. Her life in the city was full of noise and deadlines, but she had always loved stories of the countryside and the quiet adventures it offered. This summer she had finally found the chance to visit, hoping to experience life away from the clamor of the city and reconnect with her roots. As Emily drove up the long, dusty driveway, Samuel noticed the familiar car and smiled. She stepped out, brushing the dust from her jeans and carrying a small backpack. She looked around, taking in the rolling fields, the wooden fences, and the barn that had weathered many storms. "It's beautiful here," she said softly, almost in awe. Samuel nodded, feeling a sense of pride. This ranch was his life, and seeing someone appreciate it brought him a quiet satisfaction. Emily was eager to help, and she wasted no time. After exchanging greetings, she asked Samuel to show her around. They walked along the winding paths, checking on the animals, inspecting the fields, and even stopping by the small orchard where fruit trees were beginning to ripen. Samuel pointed out the different breeds of cattle, explaining their habits and personalities. Emily listened intently, her laughter ringing out whenever Samuel shared a story about a mischievous calf or a stubborn horse. She had a natural curiosity and a willingness to learn, which made Samuel feel proud and, in some ways, protective. By late afternoon, a storm was beginning to gather on the horizon. Dark clouds rolled over the mountains, and a cool wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain and wet earth. Samuel suggested that they head back toward the main house, but Emily insisted on checking the barn first. She had always loved barns with their quiet corners and hidden spaces, and she wanted to see where Samuel kept his tools and feed. Samuel hesitated for a moment but finally agreed, trusting her to be careful. As they reached the barn, Emily's foot caught on a loose plank, and she stumbled. Samuel was immediately at her side, steadying her. "Careful," he said, his voice firm but gentle. Emily smiled apologetically, brushing the dirt off her hands. "I'm fine," she insisted, but Samuel noticed the small bruise forming on her arm. Something about it made him uneasy. He could see that the fall had caused more than a simple scrape. Emily tried to laugh it off, but a grimace crossed her face. She had wrapped a piece of cloth around her arm earlier in the day, trying to keep the bruise hidden, but it was clear now that the cloth was soaked with more than just dirt. "I think I need help with this," she admitted quietly. Samuel felt a pang of concern. He was used to dealing with farm injuries. Scrapes, cuts, and burns were part of life here. But Emily's tone was different. There was a hint of discomfort, almost a plea, in her voice. The barn was dimly lit as the storm clouds thickened, casting shadows across the wooden beams. Samuel fetched a small lantern from a hook on the wall, its light flickering as he approached Emily. He knelt beside her, trying to assess the situation without causing her more pain. "We need to take the cloth off and see what we're dealing with," he said gently. Emily nodded, her eyes meeting his with a mixture of trust and apprehension. She trusted him, and that trust weighed heavily on Samuel. Carefully, he untied the cloth. Emily flinched slightly but didn't pull away. As the fabric came off, Samuel saw that the bruise was worse than he had imagined. There were signs of swelling and discoloration that indicated she had been hiding the severity of the injury. Samuel's heart sank. He had dealt with many injuries in his life, but this one was different. It was personal, and he felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. Emily winced, but she tried to stay calm. "I didn't want to worry anyone," she said softly, her voice almost lost in the rumble of distant thunder. Samuel nodded, understanding. He had seen that same courage in the animals he cared for, the way they would endure pain quietly, trying not to show weakness. But humans were different. They needed help, and Emily had placed her trust in him. Samuel fetched a bucket of cool water from the corner of the barn and a clean cloth. He began to gently clean the wound, his hands steady despite the tension in the air. Emily's breathing was shallow, and Samuel could feel her trembling. "Almost done," he said softly, trying to reassure her. The sound of the approaching storm grew louder, the wind whipping through the open barn doors, making the wooden beams creak. It felt as though the world outside was mirroring the uncertainty and fear inside the barn. Despite the discomfort and the growing tension, there was a strange sense of connection between them. Emily's trust, Samuel's care, and the quiet determination to manage the situation created a bond that was deeper than words. It was a simple moment, yet it carried weight, a reminder that even in a life of hard work and solitude, moments of human connection could be powerful. By the time the storm was directly overhead, with rain beginning to patter against the roof, the immediate danger had passed. Samuel had managed to clean the wound as best as he could and had wrapped it in a fresh, clean cloth. Emily sighed in relief, grateful for his steady hands and calm presence. Samuel felt a mixture of relief and lingering worry. The storm outside and the calm inside created a strange contrast, a reminder that life was often unpredictable and people needed each other more than they realized. As they left the barn and headed toward the main house, Samuel reflected on the day. He had expected a quiet, ordinary afternoon, but life had a way of surprising him. Emily's visit was meant to be a break from the city, a simple escape to the countryside. But it had turned into something more. It was a moment of learning, of trust, and of facing unexpected challenges together. That night, as the storm raged outside and lightning lit up the sky, Samuel sat by the fireplace, thinking about the events of the day. He realized that life on the ranch was not just about tending cattle or repairing fences. It was about caring for others, understanding their struggles, and being there when they needed help most. Emily's bravery and trust had reminded him of the deeper responsibilities he held, not just as a rancher, but as a human being capable of compassion and care. By the time sleep came, both Samuel and Emily had found a quiet peace. The storm had passed, leaving the fields washed and glistening in the early morning light. It was a reminder that even after moments of tension and fear, life continued, bringing with it new opportunities for connection, understanding, and quiet heroism. Samuel knew that this summer would be remembered, not just for the work on the ranch or the beauty of the countryside, but for the trust and courage shared in that small, dimly lit barn, a simple yet profound lesson in the importance of being there for one another. The next morning, the ranch was bathed in the soft golden light of dawn. The storm had passed, leaving the field sparkling with tiny droplets of water that clung to the grass and fences. Samuel rose early, as he always did, moving quietly so as not to disturb Emily. She had slept in the guest room near the main house, and he could hear the faint sound of birds greeting the new day outside the window. The air was fresh and crisp, carrying the earthy scent of the wet soil and hay. Samuel took a deep breath, appreciating the calm after the storm, but his mind lingered on yesterday's events. Emily's fall and the severity of her injury weighed heavily on him. He found her in the kitchen pouring herself a cup of coffee. Her hair was still damp from washing, and she wore a light sweater that did little to hide the tenderness in her arm. When she saw him, she smiled, though it was tinged with an unease that Samuel noticed immediately. "Good morning," she said softly. "Thanks again for helping me yesterday." "I didn't mean to cause so much trouble." Samuel shook his head. "It's no trouble. Injuries happen, and it's my job to help," he said, keeping his voice calm. Yet, beneath his calm exterior, he felt a growing concern. Something about the wound had seemed off. It wasn't just a simple bruise or scrape. There had been swelling, discoloration, and a slight odor that hinted at infection. He knew he had to be careful, but also act decisively to prevent anything serious. After breakfast, Samuel suggested they do a light inspection of the barn and surrounding fields. Emily agreed, eager to contribute but still cautious with her arm. They walked slowly, Samuel occasionally glancing at her as she moved, ensuring she did not put too much strain on her injury. Emily's curiosity, however, remained undiminished. She asked questions about the cattle, the crops, and the machinery, and Samuel answered patiently, explaining details that were easy to overlook but important to the life of the ranch. As they reached the barn, Samuel noticed a loose nail sticking out of one of the wooden beams near the entrance. He bent down to fix it, hammering it carefully so that it would not pose a danger. Emily, meanwhile, watched him work, her eyes filled with admiration for his skill and patience. Despite the morning sun warming the air, a cool breeze rustled through the barn, carrying the scent of hay and animals. Samuel could feel a sense of normalcy returning, but the memory of Emily's injury lingered in his mind. When Emily suggested checking the pasture for the younger calves, Samuel hesitated. He wanted her to explore and enjoy the ranch, but he also worried about her arm. "We can go, but let's take it slow," he said. Emily agreed, keeping a careful pace. As they walked through the tall grass, the calves spotted them and ran with playful energy, their small hooves kicking up tiny clouds of dust. Emily laughed, the sound bright and natural, and for a moment Samuel felt relief. Perhaps the scare from yesterday had passed, and they could enjoy the morning. However, the moment was fleeting. Emily winced suddenly, and Samuel immediately noticed her face tighten in discomfort. "Your arm?" he asked gently. She nodded, grimacing. Samuel knelt down to examine it more closely, noticing that the swelling had increased slightly overnight, and the skin around the wound had a reddish hue. His heart sank. It was clear that the injury had not been fully treated and might need more attention than they could manage on the ranch.
"We need to take a closer look at this," Samuel said softly.
Emily hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the idea of exposing her wound. She had wrapped it carefully with a cloth again, trying to hide the bruise. "I don't want to make a fuss," she said, her voice quiet, almost apologetic. Samuel shook his head, his expression serious. "It's not a fuss. Your health comes first. We have to make sure it doesn't get worse." Back in the barn, Samuel prepared the supplies he had kept for emergencies: clean cloths, a bucket of warm water, antiseptic, and bandages. He set them on a small wooden table, the lantern casting a gentle glow over the surfaces. Emily watched silently, her hands clasped together. Samuel noticed her nervousness and spoke calmly to reassure her. "I'll be careful," he said. "We'll do this slowly, step by step. You just tell me if it hurts too much, and we'll stop." With care, Samuel removed the cloth from Emily's arm. She flinched slightly, but he held her hand gently to steady her. The wound was worse than he had feared. The skin was discolored, and there was swelling that indicated the injury had been neglected for some time. Samuel's mind raced, thinking of the best way to clean it without causing her pain or making the situation more serious. Emily's breathing was shallow, and she looked away, trying to distract herself. Samuel worked patiently, washing the wound with warm water and gently applying antiseptic. The faint scent of the disinfectant mixed with the earthy aroma of hay in the barn. He kept talking to her, keeping her mind off the discomfort. "You're doing well," he said. "Almost done." Emily nodded, gripping his hand lightly for support. As he cleaned the wound, Samuel noticed more details: small cuts around the main bruise, possibly from minor accidents that Emily had not mentioned. It became clear to him that she had been trying to hide her pain, not wanting to worry anyone. Samuel felt a mix of frustration and concern. He knew that hiding injuries could lead to serious consequences, but he also understood her courage and desire to handle things on her own. By the time he finished cleaning, Samuel carefully wrapped the wound with a fresh, clean cloth. Emily sighed in relief, her tension easing slightly. "Thank you," she whispered, her eyes meeting his. Samuel nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. It was more than just a simple injury. It was trust, courage, and vulnerability, all wrapped into one moment. They spent the rest of the morning tending to the smaller tasks on the ranch. Samuel continued to show Emily the animals and explained the care routines in detail, while she listened intently. Every so often he glanced at her arm, ensuring that the bandage remained secure and that she did not overexert herself. Emily's laughter returned, soft and bright, as they worked together, and Samuel felt a quiet satisfaction in seeing her recover both physically and emotionally. By afternoon, the sky was clear again, and sunlight streamed through the barn windows. Samuel suggested a break near the small orchard, where apples were beginning to ripen. They sat on a fallen log, watching the birds flit from branch to branch. Emily ate a small apple, savoring the sweet, crisp flavor. Samuel observed her, noticing the spark of curiosity and joy in her eyes. Despite the morning's tension, the bond between them had grown stronger. There was a mutual respect and trust that came from sharing a difficult moment and overcoming it together. Emily began asking more questions about the ranch, about Samuel's life, and about the animals. She wanted to understand not just how things worked, but why. Samuel answered patiently, explaining the cycles of the seasons, the habits of the animals, and the history of the ranch. Emily listened intently, sometimes jotting down notes in a small notebook she carried with her. Her curiosity reminded Samuel of his younger self, eager to learn and explore, full of questions and wonder. As the day drew on, clouds began to form again in the distance. Samuel suggested they finish the outdoor work and return to the main house. Emily agreed, moving carefully with her arms supported. The path back was lined with tall grass, swaying gently in the breeze, and the ranch seemed alive with the quiet sounds of nature. Birds chirped, cattle lowed softly in the distance, and the faint rustle of leaves created a soothing background. Back inside the main house, Samuel made tea for them both. They sat near the large window, watching the distant clouds gathering over the mountains. Emily sipped her tea quietly, lost in thought. Samuel observed her, realizing that this visit was more than just a simple escape from the city. It was a chance for her to learn about life, responsibility, and trust. He also recognized that he was learning from her the value of patience, empathy, and the courage it takes to accept help when it is needed. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Samuel and Emily discussed plans for the next few days. They would continue tending to the animals, exploring the fields, and learning the rhythms of ranch life. Emily's arm was healing, but Samuel reminded her to take it slow and not rush any physical tasks. Emily nodded, showing a quiet determination to participate fully while respecting her limits. That evening, as the stars began to appear one by one in the clear night sky, Samuel reflected on the day. The challenges and small crises of life on the ranch were intertwined with moments of beauty, learning, and connection. Emily's injury had been an unexpected test, but it had also created an opportunity for understanding, trust, and shared experience. He realized that life was full of moments like this, moments that required patience, courage, and a willingness to support one another. Samuel felt a deep sense of satisfaction as he watched Emily settle into the guest room for the night. She had faced discomfort and fear with quiet courage, and he had been able to provide care and support when she needed it most. The bond between them, strengthened by shared experience, was a reminder of the simple yet profound connections that made life meaningful. Outside, the ranch was calm, bathed in the silver light of the moon. The gentle breeze carried the faint scent of wet earth and hay, and the distant mountains stood as silent witnesses to the day's events. Inside, Samuel and Emily rested, ready for whatever the next day would bring, knowing that they had faced challenges together and emerged stronger for it. The following morning dawned quietly with a soft light filtering through the curtains. The air was cool, and the gentle rustle of the trees outside the window provided a soothing rhythm. Samuel had risen early, as always, and moved through the house quietly so as not to disturb Emily. He could hear the faint sounds of her stirring in the guest room, a soft cough, the rustle of sheets, and it reminded him of the events of the past 2 days. Despite her bravery and patience, he knew the injury on her arm was still serious. It had not healed completely, and he could see signs that it might be worsening, if not treated properly. Emily emerged from her room soon after, careful not to jostle her arm. She carried herself with a quiet determination, determined to contribute to the day's work, despite the lingering discomfort. Samuel greeted her with a gentle nod, appreciating her resilience. "We'll take it slow today," he said, his voice calm but firm. Emily nodded in agreement, understanding the concern behind his words. They had grown closer over the past 2 days, their trust and understanding deepening with every shared task and quiet conversation. As they stepped outside, the ranch greeted them with the familiar sights and sounds of morning. The cattle grazed lazily, the wind whispered through the fields, and the distant mountains loomed majestically. The grass, still glistening from the previous storm, reflected the early sunlight in tiny, sparkling droplets. Samuel suggested they start with checking the under calves in the northern pasture, where Emily could observe without exerting herself too much. She followed, careful with every step, leaning slightly on her good arm as needed. The path to the pasture was lined with tall grasses that swayed in the breeze. Samuel noticed Emily's cautious movements and slowed his own pace to match hers. "How's your arm feeling?" he asked gently. She shrugged, trying to smile. "Better than yesterday, but it still aches," she admitted. Samuel nodded, acknowledging her honesty. He could see the swelling had reduced slightly, but there was still redness and tenderness around the wound. His mind raced, thinking of ways to manage it before it became more serious. When they reached the pasture, the calves noticed them immediately and ran toward the fence, their small hooves kicking up clouds of dust. Emily laughed, her eyes lighting up as she watched the playful animals. For a moment, the tension of the past days lifted, replaced by the simple joy of observing life in motion. Samuel watched her, feeling a mix of relief and concern. He wanted her to enjoy the ranch, but he also knew that the injury needed careful attention. Suddenly, Emily winced sharply, and Samuel turned toward her instinctively. "Your arm," he said softly, kneeling beside her. She nodded, her face pale. Samuel noticed that the swelling seemed more pronounced than before, and the skin had developed a faint sheen that suggested fluid accumulation. The wound, though covered, showed signs of infection, a subtle odor and warmth that concerned him deeply. He realized that this was no longer a minor injury. It required immediate and careful attention. "We need to take the cloth off again and inspect it," Samuel said, keeping his voice steady. Emily hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. She had been trying to manage the injury herself, wrapping it carefully each night. But now it was evident that she could not continue without proper care. Samuel placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "It's okay," he said gently. "I'll be careful, and we'll take it slow. You just need to trust me." Back in the barn, Samuel prepared the supplies with meticulous care. He laid out clean cloths, antiseptic warm water, and bandages, arranging them on the wooden table. The barn smelled faintly of hay and earth, mingling with the scent of disinfectant. Emily stood nearby, watching silently, her hands clasped together. Samuel noticed her nervousness and spoke softly, keeping her calm. "We'll do this slowly," he reassured her. "You tell me if it hurts, and we'll stop." He gently untied the cloth, careful not to cause unnecessary discomfort. Emily flinched slightly, her grip tightening on his hand, but she did not pull away. The wound beneath was worse than he had feared. There was increased swelling, a faint purplish color around the edges, and small cuts that had begun to scab. Samuel's heart sank. He had dealt with injuries before, but this required more attention and care than he had initially realized. Emily's breathing was shallow, and she turned her gaze away from the wound, trying to distract herself. Samuel spoke to her softly, keeping her mind occupied. "Almost done," he said, his voice calm. "Just a little longer." As he cleaned the wound with warm water, the mixture of water and antiseptic created a faint, sharp smell. He worked patiently, carefully removing dirt and debris, ensuring the area was clean. Despite the discomfort, Emily remained remarkably composed. Her trust in Samuel was evident in the way she allowed him to work, even when it caused pain. Samuel admired her courage. It was not easy to expose a vulnerable part of oneself, yet she had done so with quiet strength. He thought about the lessons the ranch had taught him: patience, care, and understanding. Today those lessons extended beyond the animals and fields, reaching into the very heart of human connection. As Samuel finished cleaning, he noticed more signs of concern: slight warmth around the wound, indicating inflammation, and a faint sheen of fluid that suggested infection. He knew he had to act quickly to prevent the situation from worsening. Emily, sensing his seriousness, looked up at him with a mixture of curiosity and worry. "What's wrong?" she asked softly. "It's more serious than we thought," Samuel said honestly. "We need to monitor it carefully, and I may need to call for additional help if it doesn't improve." Emily nodded, understanding the gravity without panic. She trusted Samuel to handle it. He applied a fresh, clean bandage, wrapping it securely but gently to avoid constriction. Emily winced slightly but remained still, demonstrating remarkable patience and courage. Once the immediate care was complete, Samuel suggested they continue with light tasks around the barn, things that would not strain Emily's arm. She agreed, moving carefully, and they worked together to organize feed and clean stalls. The barn, usually a place of quiet routine, now felt charged with a mixture of focus and tension. Every movement had to be deliberate, every step measured, and both Samuel and Emily were acutely aware of the potential for further injury if they were careless. As the day progressed, Samuel noticed that Emily's discomfort persisted. The swelling had not reduced significantly, and the redness seemed more pronounced. His concern grew, but he maintained a calm exterior, understanding that his composure would reassure her. They paused near the barn doors, watching the clouds gather in the distance once more. The sky was a deep gray, signaling another storm approaching. Samuel could feel a sense of urgency, knowing that they needed to stabilize the situation before any additional challenges arrived. He guided Emily to sit on a wooden bench, supporting her as she adjusted her position. The barn was quiet except for the soft patter of wind against the roof and the distant lowing of cattle. Samuel examined the wound again, this time more carefully, noting the subtle signs that suggested the injury could worsen without proper care. Emily's expression was calm but reflective, as though she understood the seriousness, yet trusted Samuel to manage it. Samuel made a decision. He would keep a close eye on the wound throughout the day, providing care at regular intervals and ensuring that it did not deteriorate. He also prepared for the possibility of seeking medical assistance if necessary. Emily, sensing his determination and careful planning, felt reassured. She appreciated the quiet confidence Samuel exuded, a calm presence that gave her a sense of safety despite her vulnerability. Throughout the afternoon they worked side by side, attending to the barn and preparing feed for the animals. Samuel occasionally checked the bandage and offered gentle reminders to move slowly. Emily followed his guidance, adjusting her movements to avoid unnecessary strain. Despite the lingering tension, there was a rhythm to their work, a shared focus that created a sense of partnership. As evening approached, the first drops of rain began to fall, tapping softly on the roof of the barn. The smell of wet earth and hay filled the air, blending with the faint antiseptic scent that lingered from their care of the wound. Samuel guided Emily back to the main house, helping her move carefully over the muddy ground. The storm outside mirrored the uncertainty they had faced throughout the day, yet inside, there was a quiet determination to persevere. By the time they reached the house, the rain had intensified, and the wind howled through the trees. Samuel helped Emily inside, ensuring she was comfortable and that her arm was properly supported. They sat by the fireplace, the warmth providing a comforting contrast to the storm outside. Emily sipped a cup of warm tea, her eyes reflecting a mixture of relief and gratitude. Samuel observed her silently, feeling the weight of responsibility and the satisfaction of knowing he had done everything he could to protect her. As night fell, the storm raged on, but inside the house, there was a sense of calm. Samuel continued to monitor Emily's arm, applying fresh bandages as needed, and ensuring she remained comfortable. They spoke quietly, sharing stories of the ranch, the animals, and their own experiences. The conversation provided a gentle distraction from the pain and tension of the day, creating a bond that was strengthened by shared challenges and trust. By late evening, the storm had begun to subside, leaving the ranch drenched and glistening under the moonlight. Samuel felt a deep sense of relief. The immediate danger had passed and Emily's condition had stabilized. Yet he remained vigilant, knowing that careful attention would be needed in the coming days. Emily, exhausted but reassured, finally rested, trusting Samuel to continue his watch quietly through the night. The morning after the second storm dawned calm and clear, with the sky a soft shade of pale blue stretching endlessly over the ranch. The night had been quiet, with only the distant sound of wind through the trees and the gentle rustle of leaves. Samuel rose early, as he always did, and moved about the house with quiet care. Emily was still asleep, her breathing steady, but Samuel's mind was alert. The events of the previous days had left a lingering concern. He had managed her wound, but he knew that full recovery required careful attention, patience, and vigilance. He prepared breakfast quietly, the aroma of fresh coffee and toasted bread filling the kitchen. Emily emerged shortly after, stretching gently, her hair falling softly around her shoulders. She moved carefully, mindful of the tenderness in her arm. "Good morning," she said, her voice soft but cheerful. Samuel nodded, offering a reassuring smile. "Morning," he replied. "How are you feeling?" "Better," Emily said, taking a seat at the table. "It's still a little sore, but I can manage." Samuel observed her carefully. The swelling had decreased slightly, and the redness was not as intense as the day before. Still, he knew that continued care was necessary to prevent complications. They ate breakfast in a comfortable silence, the sun streaming through the windows and warming the kitchen. After breakfast, Samuel suggested they take a short walk around the property to check on the animals, but he insisted on a slow pace. Emily agreed, eager to continue learning about the ranch while being careful with her arm. As they walked, Samuel explained the routines of the day, the feeding schedules, and the care needed for each animal. Emily listened intently, absorbing the information with curiosity and enthusiasm. She asked questions, not just about the tasks, but about why each task mattered. Samuel appreciated her attention to detail and her willingness to learn. When they reached the northern pasture, the younger calves ran toward them with playful energy. Emily laughed, the sound bright and carefree, and Samuel felt a deep sense of relief. Despite the recent tension and worry, life here was continuing, and moments of joy were returning. He watched her closely, ensuring she moved carefully, supporting her when she needed it. The sun glinted off the dew-covered grass, and the distant mountains stood tall and calm, a reminder of the steady, enduring rhythm of life on the ranch. As the morning progressed, Samuel suggested they return to the barn to tend to small chores that would not strain Emily's arm. She agreed, and together they organized tools, cleaned feeding stations, and checked the water troughs. The barn, bathed in the soft light of morning, felt warm and inviting. The scent of hay and earth was comforting, mingling with the faint residual smell of antiseptic from the wound care. Every movement was deliberate, measured, and careful, creating a rhythm of quiet productivity. Samuel noticed Emily glancing occasionally at her arm. "Do you want me to check it again?" he asked gently. She hesitated, then nodded. He carefully removed the bandage, examining the wound with meticulous attention. The swelling had decreased further, and the skin had begun to show signs of healing. Samuel's heart lifted slightly. Her patience, trust, and courage had paid off, and it was clear that the wound was improving. He cleaned the area gently and applied a fresh bandage, making sure it was secure but not tight. Emily watched him quietly, her eyes reflecting gratitude and relief. After the wound care, Samuel suggested a break. They walked toward the orchard, where the apple trees were heavy with fruit. Emily picked a small apple, examining it with delight before taking a bite. The crisp sweetness was refreshing, and she laughed softly, savoring the simple pleasure. Samuel watched her, feeling a mixture of pride and contentment. Despite the recent challenges, Emily had shown remarkable courage and resilience. Her ability to face discomfort and trust him had created a bond that went beyond mere familiarity. As they rested under the shade of an apple tree, Samuel reflected on the events of the past days. Emily's injury had been an unexpected challenge, but it had also provided an opportunity for connection, understanding, and shared experience. He realized that life on the ranch, while often routine, was full of moments that tested patience, courage, and trust. The way Emily had handled the situation reminded him that even in moments of vulnerability, strength and grace could emerge. Emily, sensing Samuel's reflective mood, spoke softly. "I was scared at first," she admitted. "I didn't want to trouble anyone, but you helped me through it." Samuel nodded, his expression thoughtful. "It's not trouble," he said. "We all need help sometimes. What matters is that you let someone care for you when you need it." Emily smiled, understanding the depth of his words. The afternoon passed in a quiet, productive rhythm. Samuel and Emily continued their tasks, moving carefully, tending to the animals, and preparing for the evening routines. Every so often, Samuel checked the wound, ensuring that the bandage remained secure and that no new issues had developed. Emily followed his guidance, mindful of her movements and cautious not to overexert herself. The sun moved across the sky, casting long shadows over the fields, and the ranch seemed alive with the quiet sounds of nature: birdsong, rustling leaves, and the distant lowing of cattle. As evening approached, clouds began to gather on the horizon once again. Samuel suggested they finish their outdoor work and return to the main house. Emily agreed, moving carefully, her arm supported. The first drops of rain began to fall as they reached the house, tapping softly on the roof and blending with the earthy scent of the wet fields. Samuel helped Emily inside, ensuring she was comfortable and that her arm was properly supported. Inside, they settled near the fireplace, the warmth providing comfort against the cool evening air. Emily sipped a cup of tea, feeling a sense of relief and gratitude. Samuel observed her quietly, feeling the satisfaction of having guided her safely through the past challenges. They spoke softly, sharing stories of the ranch, the animals, and their own lives. The conversation was gentle, filled with moments of laughter and reflection, providing a sense of calm and reassurance. Later, as the rain continued to fall outside, Samuel checked the wound one final time for the day. The swelling had diminished, and the skin showed clear signs of healing. Emily's courage and patience had allowed for steady recovery, and Samuel felt a profound sense of relief. He applied a fresh bandage, ensuring it was secure but comfortable, and guided Emily to rest. The storm outside created a peaceful rhythm, the sound of raindrops on the roof mingling with the quiet crackle of the fireplace. As night fell, Samuel reflected on the events of the past days. Emily's visit had been intended as a simple escape from the city, a chance to experience the tranquility of ranch life. Yet it had evolved into something far more meaningful, a shared journey of trust, courage, and connection. Samuel realized that life on the ranch was not just about work or routine. It was about the relationships and experiences that define the human heart. Emily, resting quietly, felt a deep sense of gratitude. The care and patience Samuel had shown had made her feel safe, supported, and understood. She had faced discomfort and uncertainty with courage, and in doing so had formed a bond that went beyond simple familiarity. It was a reminder that human connection, trust, and compassion could emerge in even the most unexpected circumstances. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving the ranch bathed in sunlight once more. The fields glistened with dew, the trees swayed gently in the breeze, and the distant mountains stood tall and steady. Samuel and Emily prepared for the day's work, mindful of the healing process and the routines of the ranch. There was a quiet sense of normalcy returning, but the experiences of the past days had left an indelible mark on both of them. As they worked side by side, tending to the animals and completing the morning chores, Samuel noticed a change in Emily. She moved with careful confidence, aware of her limitations but determined to participate fully. Her laughter returned naturally, her curiosity undiminished, and her gratitude evident in small gestures and smiles. Samuel felt a quiet pride and satisfaction, knowing that she had faced challenges with courage and resilience. By afternoon, the bond between them had strengthened further. Samuel guided Emily through simple tasks, offering gentle reminders and support, while she listened and learned attentively. The ranch, usually a place of routine, felt alive with shared experience and understanding. Every movement, every conversation, every careful adjustment reflected the trust and connection they had built over the past days. As evening approached, Samuel and Emily completed the day's work and returned to the main house. They sat by the fireplace, reflecting on the day's accomplishments and challenges. Emily's arm was healing steadily, and the swelling had diminished further. Samuel felt a profound sense of relief, knowing that his careful attention had ensured her safety and well-being. The night was quiet, the ranch bathed in the soft glow of the moonlight. Samuel and Emily shared a final conversation before bed, speaking of the lessons they had learned, the trust they had built, and the courage they had shown. There was a sense of closure, a feeling that the challenges of the past days had been faced and overcome together. As Emily settled into the guest room for the night, Samuel felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The injury had been serious, the challenges significant, but they had faced them with patience, courage, and care. The bond between them, strengthened by shared experience, was a reminder of the importance of trust, compassion, and human connection. The ranch returned to its quiet rhythm, the animals moving calmly through the fields, the wind whispering through the trees, and the distant mountains standing tall and steady. Samuel reflected on the past days with gratitude, knowing that life was full of unexpected challenges and moments of beauty. Emily's courage and trust had left an indelible mark, a reminder that even in moments of vulnerability, strength, resilience, and connection could emerge.